Welcome to Globewise Entertainment. Today we're diving into the darker side of classic cinema. The shocking stories behind 12 controversial 1950s movies that were banned or censored around the world. From political paranoia to provocative themes and bold storytelling, these films pushed boundaries and paid the price. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join us as we uncover Hollywood's hidden history, one reel at a time. Let us know in the comments, which of these banned films surprised you the most? Or have you seen any of them yourself? We'd love to hear your thoughts. 1. Smiles of a Summer Night, 1955. Directed by Ingmar Bergman. Set in turn-of-the-century Sweden, Smiles of a Summer Night is a tale of tangled passions, mismatched lovers, and bittersweet romance. This elegantly told black comedy explores the complexities of marriage, infidelity, and human desire. With its witty dialogue and risque subject matter, the film follows four couples navigating a weekend in the countryside, where hidden lusts and long-buried truths come to light under the glow of the midnight sun. Though tame by today's standards, the film stirred controversy in the 1950s for its frank discussion of sexuality and extramarital affairs. Many conservative audiences and censors balked at the film's playful but subversive tone. In several countries, including parts of the US, the film was heavily edited or banned altogether, deemed immoral, for suggesting that women could enjoy sexual agency and that love was rarely as pure as fairy tales promised. Yet despite the censorship, Smiles of a Summer Night helped put Ingmar Bergman on the international map, later inspiring Stephen Sondheim's musical A Little Night Music, and paving the way for more open conversations about sex and relationships in European cinema. 2. The Velvet Cage, 1955. The Pink Flamingos of the 50s, fictional story inspired by real censorship. In 1955, deep in the underground of New York's fringe film scene, a renegade director named R.J. Calhoun shocked the cultural elite with his gritty, surreal, and unapologetically obscene film The Velvet Cage. Dubbed by critics as the Pink Flamingos of its time, though the term would come years later, the film followed a cast of outcasts, drag performers, beatnik artists, and petty criminals trying to survive in the seedy underbelly of post-war America. The movie featured taboo themes, gender nonconformity, sexual liberation, and grotesque satire of the nuclear family, that made 1950s censors recoil. Shot on a shoestring budget, the film used real locations in the slums of Manhattan and cast actual LGBTQ+ performers, long before representation was remotely acceptable. Calhoun's choice to show raw, unapologetic sexuality and fluid identity was seen as an attack on the wholesome values the post-war era tried so hard to enforce. The MPAA refused to give the film a seal, and theaters in Chicago, Boston, and even Los Angeles refused to screen it. It was banned outright in the South, declared obscene in multiple legal rulings, and police raided underground screenings, confiscating film reels and arresting projectionists. Despite or because of the scandal, The Velvet Cage gained a reputation as a forbidden masterpiece. Bootleg copies circulated among college students, bohemians, and early queer communities, making it one of the most whispered about films of the decade. Today, although many original reels are lost, film historians refer to it as a precursor to punk cinema, a raw, gutsy film that broke barriers long before the world was ready. If Pink Flamingos was a Molotov cocktail in the 1970s, The Velvet Cage was the spark in the 50s that tried to light the fuse. 3. Los Salvados, 1950. Too real for comfort. Luis Buñuel's Los Olvidados shocked audiences with its raw, unflinching portrayal of poverty, juvenile crime, and hopelessness in the slums of Mexico City. Unlike the romanticized or sanitized portrayals of hardship that were common in cinema at the time, Los Olvidados pulled no punches. It showed children committing violence, stealing, and suffering in a system that failed them completely. The film follows a young boy named Pedro, as he gets pulled deeper into a life of crime under the influence of a violent street gang. It was a brutal reflection of the harsh realities many wanted to ignore, and that made it dangerous. When it was first released in Mexico, the backlash was immediate. Critics and politicians condemned the film, calling it anti-Mexican, offensive, and even a national insult. It was banned from several theaters and heavily censored for international release. The public outcry was so intense that Buñuel temporarily left Mexico. Ironically, it was abroad where the film found respect, earning Buñuel the Best Director award at the Cannes Film Festival. Over time, Los Salvados came to be seen as a masterpiece of social realism. But in the 1950s it was just too real and too painful for many to accept. 4. La Dolce Vita, 1959. The film that outraged the Vatican. When Federico Fellini released La Dolce Vita in 1959, he didn't just make a movie, he sparked a cultural earthquake. Set in Rome and following the disillusioned journalist Marcello Rubini, the film painted a haunting picture of moral decay in high society, featuring scandalous parties, promiscuity, and religious symbolism that hit too close to home for the Catholic Church. One unforgettable scene showed actress Anita Ekberg wading into the Trevi Fountain in a strapless dress, an image that would become iconic, yet considered wildly indecent at the time. The Vatican didn't just condemn the film, they labeled it a danger to public morality. Several countries followed suit. It was banned or heavily censored in Spain, Argentina, and even parts of Italy. The U.S. demanded edits to meet obscenity laws before allowing it to screen. Despite or because of the outrage, La Dolce Vita became a masterpiece of world cinema, a film that dared to expose the spiritual emptiness behind the glamorous facade of modern life. 5. Room at the Top, 1959. In 1959, British cinema took a bold step into uncharted emotional and social territory with Room at the Top, a film that dared to expose the raw realities of class struggle, ambition, and forbidden love. Adapted from John Brayne's best-selling novel, the story follows Joe Lampton, a working-class man with relentless drive who claws his way into upper-class society by courting a wealthy woman, while simultaneously falling in love with an older, married woman named Alice Askill. Simone Signoret's haunting portrayal of Alice earned her an Academy Award, but the film's real impact lay in its unflinching depiction of sexual relationships, adultery, and class hypocrisy. In a time when polite society refused to acknowledge such topics, Room at the Top shattered taboos. Its scenes of intimacy were unusually direct for the era, leading to censorship battles both in the UK and abroad. In the United States, the film faced delays and cuts before it could be released. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it outright, deeming it morally objectionable. In Ireland and some conservative regions, it was banned or heavily censored, with authorities citing its immoral theme and explicit content. Yet, the controversy only fueled its success. Audiences, hungry for more realistic and mature storytelling, flocked to see it. Room at the Top marked a turning point in British cinema. It signaled the end of sanitized, idealistic portrayals of life and ushered in a new era of gritty, socially conscious drama. Behind the scenes, the backlash was fierce. Letters poured into newspapers, politicians debated its merit, and critics were sharply divided. But history would remember the film not for its scandal, but for its courage. Room at the Top broke down barriers and redefined what adult cinema could be. 6. Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Rock and Roll and Rebellion in the Classroom. When Blackboard Jungle hit theaters in 1955, it didn't just start a conversation, it started a riot. Directed by Richard Brooks and starring Glenn Ford, this gritty drama followed an idealistic teacher assigned to a rough inner-city school, where violence, racial tension, and disrespect ran rampant. But it wasn't just the harsh realities of juvenile delinquency that shocked audiences, it was the music. The film opened with a jarring blast of Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and his Comets. It was the first time rock and roll had ever been used so prominently in a Hollywood movie, and it ignited something explosive in the youth. Teenagers danced in the aisles, while more conservative viewers saw it as the soundtrack to anarchy. In cities like Memphis and Atlanta, the film was banned outright. In others, it was heavily censored, with local boards cutting out scenes deemed too inflammatory, especially those depicting racial integration and violent outbursts. In the UK, some theaters refused to screen it for fear it would incite real-life teenage riots, and in some cases it did. Critics were divided. Adults saw it as a dangerous glorification of rebellion. Teenagers saw it as their truth finally portrayed on screen. Today, Blackboard Jungle stands as a time capsule, a powerful portrait of a generation caught between post-war conformity and the restless birth of rock and roll rebellion. 7. 1951 remake. In the heart of post-war Los Angeles, a city teetering between glamour and grit, a chilling shadow crept through the neon-lit streets. It was the 1951 remake of an American reimagining of Fritz Lang's haunting 1931 German original, and it shocked audiences not just with its dark subject matter, but with how directly it confronted the horrors lurking behind society's polished exterior. Directed by Joseph Losey, this version of swapped Weimar Berlin for mid-century LA, but the terror remained the same. A serial child killer prowling the streets, igniting panic among the public and even among the criminal underworld. But it wasn't just the disturbing premise that sparked outrage. It was the film's unflinching portrayal of law enforcement's failure, the eerie sympathy it evoked for the deranged killer, and the way it forced America to look at its own systems of justice. At a time when the Hays Code tightly gripped Hollywood, the film's controversial themes were too much for many cities. It was banned outright in some U.S. locations and heavily censored in others. Censors feared its grim realism and moral ambiguity. Some called it dangerous, even un-American. Joseph Losey, already under scrutiny for alleged communist ties, only fueled the controversy. Not long after M's release, he would flee to Europe to escape the Hollywood blacklist. M wasn't just a remake. It was a bold, unsettling mirror held up to post-war America. And that was precisely why so many tried to keep it from being seen. 8. Les Diabolics, 1955. The film that was too twisted for its time. In the shadows of a crumbling French boarding school, a sinister plan was unfolding, one that would shock audiences around the world. Les Diabolics, directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot, told the chilling tale of a wife and a mistress who conspire to murder the man they both despise. But what seemed like the perfect crime spirals into psychological horror, deception, and one of the most terrifying twist endings in film history. Released in 1955, this black-and-white French thriller pushed every limit of decency and morality for the time. The film's disturbing portrayal of female complicity in murder, its intense suspense, and scenes involving a decomposing body in a bathtub horrified censors. In several countries, including the US and the UK, the film faced bans, heavy cuts, or age restrictions. It was branded morally indecent and deeply disturbing, especially for its portrayal of women not as victims, but as calculated villains. Les Diaboliques wasn't just banned, it haunted audiences. Even Alfred Hitchcock reportedly wished he'd made it. Its slow, nerve-wracking tension influenced generations of thrillers, including Hitchcock's own Psycho. Today, it's remembered as a masterpiece of psychological horror. But back then, it was seen as a threat to social norms and sanity itself. 9. Beat the Devil, 1953. The satirical spy that confused the censors. Before satire was cool, Beat the Devil dared to mock everything audiences thought they knew about espionage thrillers. Directed by John Huston and co-written with none other than Truman Capote, this 1953 film was a tongue-in-cheek take on the globe-trotting spy genre, years ahead of its time. Starring Humphrey Bogart and Jennifer Jones, it followed a group of shady characters scheming to claim land in Africa rich in uranium. But instead of the usual suspense and patriotism of Cold War-era films, Beat the Devil delivered absurdity, wit, and irony. It poked fun at American greed, British colonialism, and the absurdity of global politics, all under the guise of a stylish adventure. The problem? Censors and critics didn't get the joke. In an era when America was hypersensitive about communism, uranium, and its global image, Beat the Devil struck many as unpatriotic and subversive. Some territories refused to screen it entirely. Others demanded edits or restricted showings. Bogart himself reportedly hated the film at first, frustrated by the constant rewrites on set. But in time it gained cult status, with critics later calling it a comic precursor to the James Bond genre. What was once misunderstood became recognized as a clever rebellion against Hollywood formula, and a bold example of how satire can challenge power. 10. Godzilla 1954. Japan's monster with a message too dangerous to air. When Godzilla roared onto Japanese screens in 1954, it wasn't just a monster movie. It was a searing political allegory. Born from the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Godzilla represented the horrifying consequences of nuclear warfare. The giant lizard, awakened and mutated by radiation, symbolized Japan's deep scars from World War II and its lingering fears of atomic annihilation. But the film's raw anti-nuclear message proved too controversial for many. In the US, Godzilla was drastically edited and released as Godzilla, King of the Monsters. In 1956, American producers not only added actor Raymond Burr to give it a Western anchor, but also removed large parts of the original footage, especially scenes that reflected on Japan's wartime trauma and criticism of nuclear testing. Even in Japan, early reactions were divided. Some government officials and conservative groups worried that the film might stir anti-American sentiment at a time when Japan was still under strong U.S. influence in the post-war era. Yet despite the censorship, Godzilla exploded into a global phenomenon. Beneath the creature feature surface was a haunting reflection of a nation grappling with its past and a world edging toward Cold War catastrophe. In truth, the monster wasn't just stomping cities. It was stomping on the silence surrounding nuclear devastation. 11. Senzo 1954. Passion, Politics, and Scandal. In 1954, Italian director Luchino Visconti released a film so lavish, sensual, and politically charged that it sent shockwaves through Europe and found itself banned or heavily censored in multiple countries. That film was Senzo, a tragic tale of love and betrayal set against the backdrop of the Italian-Austrian War of the 1860s. The story follows Countess Livia Serpieri, a wealthy Venetian aristocrat, who falls passionately in love with an Austrian officer, Franz Mahler. But their affair is more than just forbidden romance. It's a betrayal of her country, her class, and ultimately her soul. As Livia becomes more obsessed, the lines between love and treachery blur in a way that disturbed censors everywhere. What made Senzo so controversial wasn't just its eroticism. It was Visconti's unflinching portrayal of moral decay, the corrupting power of love, and the brutal hypocrisy of war. The film's open criticism of nationalism, aristocracy, and even the church led to bans and severe cuts in Italy, the United States, and beyond. American versions of Senzo were heavily edited, stripping away its political context and reducing it to a melodrama. The original Italian version, with its full force of emotional devastation and political commentary, was only restored decades later, revealing Visconti's true vision. Today, Senzo is recognized as a masterpiece of Italian cinema. But in the conservative climate of the 1950s, it was too bold, too provocative, and too dangerous for many to accept. 12. Hiroshima Mon Amour 1959. Memory, Love, and Censorship. In the shadows of World War II's devastating legacy, Hiroshima Mon Amour dared to speak what others wouldn't even whisper. Directed by French auteur Alain Resnais, this hauntingly poetic film told the forbidden love story of a French actress and a Japanese architect, set in the ruins of post-bomb Hiroshima. It wasn't just a romance, it was a meditation on memory, loss, and the enduring scars of war. But that honesty came at a price. Censors in multiple countries were quick to slam the brakes. The film's opening sequence, featuring sensual imagery and dialogue between the lovers, was considered too provocative. Japan was especially sensitive not just because of the nudity, but because of its raw, unfiltered portrayal of Hiroshima and the lingering trauma of the atomic bomb. In the United States and other conservative nations, the blend of eroticism, political undertones, and emotional intensity made it a lightning rod for controversy. Some theaters refused to show it altogether. In several regions, entire scenes were cut or dubbed into incoherence to avoid backlash. Yet despite the censorship, Hiroshima Mon Amour survived, and eventually thrived. Today, it's hailed as a cornerstone of French New Wave cinema, and a courageous work that challenged taboos when the world wasn't ready. And there you have it, 12 bold and controversial films from the 1950s that shocked audiences, challenged censors, and changed cinema forever. Which of these movies do you think deserved the controversy, and which were just ahead of their time? Drop your favorite in the comments below. We're reading every one. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment, now's the perfect time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into hidden Hollywood, banned classics, and cinematic gems. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next reel.